We will help you protect yourselves the way the architects protected us. The Council 3 months passed since the Vorath fleet surrendered in Earth's orbit. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. On dozens of worlds, human engineers worked alongside alien scientists, installing defensive systems based on the Guardian Network technology. Small species that had lived in fear for centuries were building weapons that could protect them from empires. Hana stood in the newly constructed Defense Coordination Center on Luna Base. Screens around her showed real-time data from 57 different star systems. Each one had requested Earth's help in building their own defense networks. Each one had been given the technology freely, exactly as Hyun had promised. Status report on the Krell system? She asked. A technician responded immediately. Installation is 70% complete. They should have full defensive capability within 2 weeks. The Krell are very grateful. They've been paying tribute to the Vorath Empire for 300 years. Soon they'll be free. Hana allowed herself a small smile. This was what the architects had wanted. Not one species dominating others, but all species having the chance to protect themselves and grow. On Vorath Prime, the Vorath homeworld, Thelkaris stood trial. The Grand Court was filled with his people, all watching as judges decided his fate. He had lost the fleet. He had been humiliated by a species the Vorath considered weak. By Vorath law, he should be executed for such failure. But then something unexpected happened. A hologram appeared in the center of the courtroom. It was Sora, the human who had monitored the entire incident from Earth's Orbital Defense Command. "Honored judges of Vorath," Sora said, her image flickering slightly. "I come to speak on behalf of Commander Thelkaris. He is charged with failure and humiliation, but I tell you that he is guilty of neither." The lead judge, an ancient Vorath with scars covering his red skin, leaned forward. "Explain yourself, human." Commander Thelkaris followed orders from the Galactic Council. He believed he was enforcing legitimate law. He had no way of knowing that Earth sat on an ancient defensive network. None of you did. When he discovered the truth, he chose to surrender rather than sacrifice his warriors in a battle he couldn't win. That is not failure. That is wisdom. Sora's image turned to face Thelkaris directly. The commander could have fought. He could have ordered his fleet to die attacking Earth. Some might call that honorable. I call it wasteful. He saved 8,000 Vorath lives that day. He brought his warriors home alive. If that is failure, then I hope more commanders fail in such ways. The courtroom erupted in discussion. The judges conferred among themselves for several minutes. Finally, the lead judge spoke. "The human makes a compelling argument. Commander Thelkaris, you are found not guilty. You acted with the information available to you, and you protected your warriors when the situation changed. However, you cannot remain in the military. You will be discharged with honor and assigned to the diplomatic corps." Thelkaris bowed his head. It was not the outcome he expected, but it was better than execution. As he left the courtroom, he found himself thinking about the humans differently. They had every right to be vengeful. He had come to conquer them. Instead, they had protected him, defended him, and now advocated for his life. Perhaps the architects knew what they were doing when they protected. Thelkaris accepted his new position as a diplomatic liaison to Earth. He became an unexpected advocate for peaceful coexistence between species. Whenever Vorath leaders suggested aggressive expansion or conquest, he reminded them of what happened when they underestimated a protected world. On Earth, Tay and Jin continued excavating ancient architect sites across the galaxy. They had discovered something remarkable. Earth wasn't the only protected world. There were 16 others, just as the data had suggested. 3 of those worlds had already developed intelligent life. The other 13 were still in earlier stages of development, but life was growing. Jin pulled up a map showing all 17 protected systems. "Look at the pattern. The architects spread these systems across the galaxy deliberately. They're positioned so that any major empire will eventually encounter at least one of them. It's like they were creating checkpoints, places where aggressive expansion would naturally be stopped." Tay nodded. They were shaping the galaxy's future, creating places where life could develop without fear. If we can find the other 3 developed worlds and share this information with them, we could create a network of protected civilizations. A network built on defense, not conquest, Jin agreed. That would change everything. They sent their findings to Hyun, who immediately authorized missions to contact the other protected worlds. If humanity could find allies who shared the same defensive technology, they could reshape galactic politics entirely. Mina, still working on integrating human and architect technology, made breakthrough after breakthrough. She discovered that the Guardian network could be scaled down. The massive planetary-scale weapons could be adapted to individual ships. This meant that any species with the technology could build ships that were almost impossible to destroy, while remaining relatively weak in offensive capability. "It's brilliant," she explained to a group of visiting alien engineers. The architects didn't want to create superweapons that could be used for aggression. They created defenses so strong that attack becomes pointless. If everyone has perfect defense and weak offense, then war stops making sense, one of the engineers, a small insectoid creature from a species that had been conquered twice in its history, clicked its mandibles in what Mina had learned was their version of laughter. "You humans are strange. Most species who gain power use it to dominate. You use it to make everyone equal." "We learned from the architects," Mina replied. "They had the power to conquer the entire galaxy. Instead, they used it to nurture life. We're just following their example." Yuna's role had changed dramatically. After the crisis, the Galactic Council underwent massive reforms. The old system, where large empires dominated smaller species, was falling apart. 57 species had declared independence, protected by Earth's shared technology. The Council could no longer enforce its will through military threat. A new council was formed, this one including representatives from all the newly independent species. Yuna was elected as Secretary General, chosen specifically because Earth had proven it would not abuse its power. She stood before the new council on her first day, looking at the diverse faces of hundreds of species. "This council will be different," she announced. "We will not rule through fear or military might. We will create laws that protect the weak and limit the strong. Every species, no matter how small or young, will have an equal voice." A representative from one of the old empires stood up. "And if the strong refuse to accept this, if we choose to ignore your new council?" Yuna met his gaze calmly. "Then you will face species protected by the same technology that stopped the Vorath fleet. You will find that conquest no longer works. The age of empires built on military domination is over. The architects planned this. They scattered protected worlds across the galaxy, knowing that eventually, the defensive technology would spread. They were creating the conditions for lasting peace." The representative sat down without responding. He knew she was right. The new council proposed something called the Silent Planet Accords. Any species that received Guardian Network technology had to agree to 3 simple rules. First, use the technology only for defense, never for conquest. Second, share the technology freely with any species that requested it. Third, never attempt to control another species through military force. The vote on the accords took place 3 months after Yuna's election. She watched the votes come in, her heart pounding. When the final tally appeared, she felt tears in her eyes. 247 species voted in favor. Only 3 voted against, all of them former empires that refused to accept the new reality. "The accords pass," Yuna announced. "From this day forward, the galaxy has a new foundation, not built on strength, but on mutual protection. Not built on fear, but on cooperation." On Earth, Hyun watched the vote from his office. He was older now, the stress of the past month showing in new lines on his face. But he smiled. The architects had given humanity an incredible gift, and humanity had done something remarkable with it. They had shared it. He walked to the memorial that had been built to honor the architects. At its center was one of the ancient satellites, preserved exactly as it had been found. The symbols carved into its surface glowed softly in the evening light. Jin's final translation of the architect message was carved into the stone base of the memorial. "If you have awakened this system, you face danger. If you use it wisely, you face destiny. The choice, as always, belongs to you." Hyun placed his hand on the stone. "We chose wisely," he said quietly. "I hope you're watching wherever you are. I hope you're proud of what we did with your gift." Around Earth, the old satellites continued their eternal watch. Mars's moons remained alert. Jupiter's storm collected power. Saturn's rings stood ready. The Guardian network never slept. But now similar networks were growing across the galaxy, protecting dozens of worlds. The galaxy had changed. The age of empires was ending. The age of cooperation was beginning. And at the center, Hyun's face filled screens across the galaxy. In the Vorath fleet, warriors who had laughed at humanity 2 weeks ago now watched in silence. In the council chamber on Apex Prime, delegates who had voted to humiliate Earth now waited to see if they would face retribution. On Earth itself, billions of humans held their breath. People of the galaxy, Hyun began. My name is Hyun, President of the United Earth Government. I speak to you now in a moment that will define humanity's future. 2 weeks ago, the Galactic Council voted to send a fleet to Earth. They did not believe our warnings about the ancient markers. They thought we were lying to make ourselves seem important. He paused, letting his words sink in. They were wrong. The markers are real. The warnings are real. And now you all see what the warnings meant. Earth is not defenseless. This solar system is protected by weapons built 50,000 years ago by a species we call the Architects. These weapons are powerful enough to destroy every military force in this galaxy. In the council chamber, several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They knew he was right. But having power, Hyun continued, is not the same as using it. Commander Thelkaris, you came to Earth with 2,000 warships. You came to make my people bow. You wanted to humiliate us in front of the galaxy. I could order the Guardian Network to destroy every single ship in your fleet. The weapons are ready. They await my command. Thelkaris felt his 4 hearts beating fast. Around him, his crew waited for death. But I will not give that command, Hyun said. The architects who built this network did not create it for genocide. They created it to protect developing species. They wanted to give young civilizations a chance to grow, to learn, to become something better. If I use these weapons to kill, I betray their purpose. Hyun looked directly into the camera. I will defend Earth. I will protect my people. But I will not become a killer unless I have no other choice. Commander Thelkaris, this is your one chance. Order your fleet to power down your weapons. Surrender peacefully. I promise you that you and your crews will be treated with respect and eventually return to your homeworlds unharmed. Kelshir grabbed Thelkaris' arm. Commander, take the offer. Pride isn't worth dying for. Thelkaris looked at the screen showing the weapons aimed at his fleet. He saw Mars's moons tracking his ships with targeting systems. He saw Saturn's rings glowing with stored energy. He thought about the 8,000 Vorath warriors under his command. They had families. They had lives to return to. I accept your terms, Thelkaris said quietly. But before any surrender could be formalized, a new message arrived from the Galactic Council. The head of the council, an ancient being from the Nexian Collective, appeared on every screen. Attention, Earth, the Nexian leader said. We have observed the revelation of the Guardian Network. While we acknowledge our error in doubting your warnings, we must now address a new concern. Your planet possesses weapons of unprecedented power. For the safety of the galaxy, we propose that the Guardian Network be placed under joint council oversight. This is not a request. If you refuse, the council will declare humanity an existential threat to galactic peace. Hyun felt anger rise in his chest. You voted to invade my world. You sent ships to humiliate us. And now that you see we can defend ourselves, you want to control our defenses? We want to ensure these weapons are never used for conquest, the Nexian replied. Then judge us by our actions. Hyun shot back. Watch what we do next. That will tell you everything you need to know about Earth's intentions. He cut the transmission and turned to Hana. Activate the Guardian Network. Defensive mode only. Hana entered the command. Across the solar system, the ancient weapons came to full power. The Vorath fleet, still frozen in space, suddenly found themselves pulled by invisible forces. Gravitational beams from Jupiter grabbed hold of the Vorath ships gently but firmly. The massive planet's gravity well, carefully shaped by the Guardian Network, created a current in space that moved the warships like leaves in a stream. Thelkaris felt his flagship moving. What's happening? They're pulling us, Kelshir reported. But carefully. Our life support is intact. Our crew is safe. They're just moving us. One by one, the Vorath warships were pulled into stable orbits around various planets. Some went to Mars, others to Jupiter's moons. A few dozen, including Thelkaris' flagship, were guided gently toward Earth itself. The process took 6 hours. In that time, not a single Vorath warrior was harmed. As the ships settled into their new positions, Saturn's rings released a pulse of electromagnetic energy. The pulse was precisely calibrated, strong enough to disable weapon systems but weak enough to leave life support and basic communications intact. In seconds, 2,000 Vorath warships became unable to fight, but they could still live. Their crews could still breathe, eat, and survive in comfort. They were prisoners, but they were treated better than most militaries treated their own soldiers. Sora watched from orbital command, her mouth hanging open. That was beautiful. They neutralized an entire fleet without killing anyone. Wu, watching from Luna Base, ran new calculations. The precision required to do that. We couldn't do it. Even with all our modern technology, we couldn't pull off something that delicate. Those gravitational beams had to move 2,000 ships without crushing them. The electromagnetic pulse had to be strong enough to disable weapons but not harm organic life. The architects were brilliant. Tay and Jin, still translating data from the Guardian network, discovered more information about Earth's true nature. Jin's hand shook as he read the translations. Tay, Jin said, you need to see this. It's about the solar system itself. What about it? It's not natural. None of it is natural. The Guardian network didn't just add weapons to our solar system. The entire solar system is the weapon. Jin pulled up schematics. Look at the planetary positions. Look at the orbital mechanics. Everything is too perfect. Too stable. Tay studied the data. You're saying the architects moved the planets? Or created them? I don't know which. But Earth's solar system isn't a natural formation that the architects added defenses to. The whole thing was built from scratch. It's a fortress disguised as a star system. Humanity didn't evolve on a random planet. We evolved on a weapons platform. The implications were staggering. Earth wasn't just protected. Earth was the weapon. The entire solar system, everything humans had studied and explored, was part of an ancient defensive installation. Tai called Hyun immediately. Sir, we need to talk about what Earth actually is. After hearing Tay's report, Hyun sat in silence for several minutes. Around him, his staff waited. Finally, he spoke. So we're not just people who evolved on a protected world. We're people who evolved inside a weapon? Essentially, yes, Tay confirmed. The architects built this solar system specifically to nurture human development while keeping us safe. We were never supposed to be alone in the universe. We were always meant to be protected until we were ready. Ready for what? To join the galaxy? To take our place among the other species? The architects knew that young civilizations are vulnerable. They knew that aggressive older species would try to conquer or destroy us, so they built fortresses around 17 different worlds and let life develop naturally inside those fortresses. Hyun looked at the screens showing the disabled Vorath fleet. And now we have to decide what to do with all this power. Junho, representing Earth's scientific community, entered the command center. He had been listening to the conversation and had ideas. Mr. President, I propose we share the Guardian network technology with the galaxy. Several staff members protested immediately. Are you crazy? This is our only advantage. Exactly, Junho said. It's an advantage. That makes other species afraid of us. Fear breeds hate. Hate breeds war. But if we share this technology freely, we show the galaxy that we're not conquerors. We show them that the architects were right to protect us. Nari, Earth's chief diplomat who had been monitoring from another facility, joined the conversation via video link. Junho is right. The smaller species in the galaxy, the ones who are constantly bullied by empires like the Vorath, they need this technology. If we give them the ability to defend themselves, we create allies. We create a galaxy where strength doesn't automatically mean oppression. Hyun considered this carefully. It was a radical idea. Most species would hoard such technology, use it to become the dominant power. But maybe that was exactly why the architects chose Earth. Maybe they knew humanity would choose differently. There's still the problem of the Council's ultimatum, Hana pointed out. They want oversight of the Guardian network. If we refuse, they declare us a threat. Let them, Hyun said firmly. The Guardian network answers to Earth and only Earth. The architects built it to protect us, not to be controlled by a council of species who just tried to invade us. We will share the technology freely with any species that wants to use it for defense, but we will never give control of our own defense to others. He opened another channel to the Galactic Council. Members of the Council, you asked for oversight of Earth's defenses. I reject that request. The Guardian network belongs to humanity, but I make you this offer instead. We will share the defensive technology with any species that requests it. Free of charge. No conditions. The message echoed through every ship in the Vorath fleet. The words appeared on their screens. spoken in their own language by voices that sounded ancient and powerful. Every Vorath warrior felt a chill run through their blood. This was not supposed to happen. Earth was supposed to be weak. Thelkaris grabbed his communication controls with shaking hands. Human ships respond immediately. What is this? What have you done? On Earth, Hyun received the transmission in his command center. Around him, his entire staff stood frozen, staring at screens that showed the solar system coming alive. He looked at Hana, who looked back at him with wide eyes. She had no answers. Commander Thelkaris, Hyun replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. We didn't do anything. We don't know what this is. We didn't build these systems. Lies. Thelkaris roared. These weapons respond to human commands. The message said they await your authorization. I swear to you, we did not create this defense network. We had no idea it existed until 2 days ago. The conversation was interrupted by Mina's voice over the facility speakers. Mr. President, you need to see this now. Hyun rushed to Mina's station. She had pulled up detailed scans of Mars. The 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, had completely transformed. What humans had thought were natural moons were actually massive weapons platforms. The dust covering them had blown away, revealing surfaces made of materials that human science couldn't identify. They've been hiding, Mina said, her voice filled with awe. All this time they've been hiding, pretending to be natural objects. Sora, monitoring from orbital defense, added more information. It's not just Mars, look at Jupiter. On the screens, Jupiter's great red spot pulsed with bright blue energy. Beams of light connected the spot to Jupiter's major moons. Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, and Io had all revealed hidden structures beneath their surfaces. They were drawing power from Jupiter's massive gravity well. Wu, a physicist stationed at Luna Base, ran calculations on his computer. Numbers filled his screen, each one more impossible than the last. His hands moved frantically over his keyboard as he checked and rechecked his work. This can't be right, he muttered to himself. Then louder, this can't be right. His supervisor rushed over. What is it? Wu pointed at his calculations. The energy readings from Jupiter. They're off the scale. If my math is correct, that storm is collecting power from Jupiter's magnetic field. It's been collecting power for millions of years. How much power? Enough to destroy a planet. Maybe enough to destroy several planets. The supervisor grabbed the nearest communication device. Connect me to Earth Command. They need to know what we're dealing with. On Saturn, the rings continued their precise movements. Each tiny particle of what humanity had thought was ice and rock was actually a component of a massive array. Together they formed a focusing lens thousands of kilometers wide. Energy from the sun was being collected, amplified, and directed toward specific points in space. The Vorath fleet hung in space, unable to move forward or backward. Their ships were surrounded by targeting locks. Every weapons platform in the solar system had them in its sights. One wrong move and they would all die. Kelshir approached Thelkaris carefully. Commander, we should retreat. This is beyond anything we prepared for. We cannot retreat, Thelkaris growled. The entire galaxy is watching. If we run from the humans, the Vorath Empire will be humiliated. We will never recover from such shame. If we stay, we might all die. Thelkaris had no response to that. He knew Kelshir was right, but he also knew his people would never forgive him for running from what they believed was a weak species. Back in Ty's laboratory, the scientist worked frantically with Jin to access the data coming from the ancient network. The satellites were broadcasting vast amounts of information, all in the same dead language as the warning markers. Jin's translation programs worked overtime, converting the ancient text into modern human languages. What they discovered made both men go pale. Tay, Jin said slowly, these satellites are identifying themselves. They call themselves the Guardian Network. Guardian of what? Of Earth, of humanity. Jin pulled up more translations. But they weren't built by humans. They were built by someone else. Someone who came to Earth 50,000 years ago. Tay leaned closer to the screen. Who? They call themselves the Architects. According to this data, they traveled the galaxy looking for worlds where intelligent life might develop. When they found such worlds, they built defensive networks around them to protect the developing species until they were ready to join the galactic community. How many worlds did they protect? Jin scrolled through the data. 17. Earth is one of 17 protected worlds. We're not unique, Tay. But we are protected. Tay immediately called Hyun with this information. The president listened carefully, his face growing more serious with each word. So these architects, Hyun said slowly, they built this network to protect humanity before we even existed? That's what the data says. They wanted to make sure young species had a chance to grow without being conquered or destroyed by older, more aggressive civilizations. Where are these architects now? We don't know. The data doesn't say. They might be extinct, or they might have moved beyond our galaxy. But they left their defense network behind, set to activate if Earth was ever threatened. Hyun looked at the screens showing the Vorath fleet trapped in his solar system. He looked at the massive weapons platforms that had hidden themselves as moons and planets. He looked at Saturn's rings, now revealed as a focusing array powerful enough to crack a planet in half. Mr. President, Hana said quietly, the network is still waiting for your command. What do you want to do? Hyun stood in silence for a long moment. Every person in the command center waited for his decision. 2,000 Vorath warships hung in space, their crews terrified. The entire galaxy was watching, waiting to see how Earth would respond to this revelation of ancient power. On Apex Prime, Yuna watched the live feeds with the rest of the Galactic Council. The chamber, usually filled with noise and argument, was completely silent. Every delegate stared at the screens in shock. They had voted to punish Earth, believing it to be a weak and insignificant species. Now they saw the truth. Earth sat at the center of a weapons system that made their own militaries look like children's toys. A Nexian delegate spoke, her voice shaking. They could destroy us all. Every species in this chamber. If they wanted revenge for our vote, they could wipe out our homeworlds before we could respond. Nobody disagreed with her assessment. The math was simple. If one solar system held this much defensive power, and there were 17 such systems scattered across the galaxy, then the architects had created enough weapons to dominate everyone. Mina made another discovery at Earth Command. She had been analyzing the network's code, trying to understand how it worked. What she found made her rush to Hyun immediately. Sir, I need to show you something about the weapons network. What is it? Mina pulled up the network's programming on the main screen. I've been reading the code. It's incredibly advanced, but I can understand the basic logic. The network has 2 operational modes, and what are they? The first mode is defend and destroy. It can eliminate any threat completely. But that's not the active mode. She highlighted a section of code. The active mode is called defend and disable. The network is designed to protect Earth without killing attackers if possible. Hyun felt something loosen in his chest. The architects didn't want their network to be used for genocide. Exactly. They built it to protect, not to conquer. Every weapon system is calibrated to disable enemy ships, to trap them, to neutralize threats without necessarily destroying them. Unless Earth specifically orders lethal force, the network will try to save lives. Hyun looked at Hana. That changes things. It does, she agreed. We can defend ourselves without becoming monsters. Hyun made his decision. He opened a channel to the Vorath fleet and to the Galactic Council simultaneously. His face appeared on screens across 2,000 warships and in the council chamber itself. The Vorath Armada gathered at the edge of council space. 2,000 warships, each one massive and bristling with weapons, formed into perfect military formations. Their hulls were painted deep crimson, the color of conquest. Thelkaris stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fist, watching his fleet prepare for departure. Open a channel to all galactic networks, he commanded. His crew rushed to comply. Within seconds, his face appeared on screens across hundreds of worlds. People of the galaxy, I speak to you now as commander of the Vorath Armada. Today we travel to Earth. The humans have spread lies about ancient warnings. They have tried to deceive the Council. We will show them that such behavior has consequences. We will make them bow to galactic law. Let this be a lesson to all young species who think they can claim importance they have not earned. He cut the transmission. Around him, his officers prepared for the journey. The trip to Earth would take 2 weeks, even at maximum speed. Thelkaris allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would cement his legacy. He would be remembered as the commander who put humanity in its place. On Earth, alarm bells rang in every military base. Hyun, the president of the United Earth government, sat in an emergency meeting with his entire cabinet. Hana stood at the head of the table, displaying tactical readouts on a massive screen. The Vorath fleet just left council space. she reported. They're not hiding their intentions. They've broadcast their plans to the entire galaxy. They want to humiliate us. Hyun's jaw tightened. He was an older man, his hair gray, but his eyes were sharp.
What are our options?
Limited. In a straight fight, 2,000 Vorath warships would crush our entire defense force. We have 300 modern ships. We're outgunned 6-1. What about the deep grid? Hyun asked. You activated it 2 days ago. Has anything happened? Hana pulled up new data on the screen. That's the strange part. Old satellites started moving. Satellites we didn't launch. They've been in orbit for... we don't know how long. When I activated the deep grid, they woke up. Mina, a young systems engineer, spoke up from her seat at the end of the table. Mr. President, I've been studying these satellites for the past 48 hours. They're covered in the same symbols as the ancient markers, the ones from the warnings. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Hyun leaned forward. Are you saying these satellites are 50,000 years old? At least Mina confirmed. But they're still functional. More than functional. They're waiting. When we activated the deep grid, they came online and started communicating with other objects in the solar system. Objects we thought were natural. What kind of objects? Hana asked. Mina's hands shook slightly as she pulled up images. Mars's moons Phobos and Deimos. Jupiter's major moons. Saturn's rings. Even some asteroids in the belt. They're all sending signals back and forth. It's like they're part of a network. Hyun stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see Earth cities glowing in the night. Billions of people going about their lives unaware that a massive alien fleet was coming to subjugate their world. Keep monitoring those satellites, he ordered. And someone get Tae and Jin on the line. If these objects are related to the ancient warnings, they might know more. Tae and Jin were working in their laboratory when the call came. Jin, a linguist who specialized in dead languages, had been reviewing the translations of the marker warnings for the 100th time. He looked exhausted. Dr. Tae, Jin said slowly, I think I made a mistake in the translation. Tae looked up from his microscope. What do you mean? Jin displayed the ancient symbols on a large screen. We translated this phrase as, do not wake the silent planet. But I've been comparing it to other dead languages we've discovered. The grammar structure is slightly different than I thought. What does it actually say? Jin's voice was barely a whisper. Do not make the silent planet speak. Tae felt the blood drain from his face. That's a completely different meaning. It's not a warning to avoid waking something up, Jin explained. It's a warning not to provoke Earth, not to make it respond. The planet is silent, but if forced to speak, it will have something to say, Tae finished. He grabbed his communication device and called Hana immediately. We got the translation wrong. The warnings aren't about waking something up. They're about making Earth respond to threats. Back on the Crimson Fist, Thelkaris studied reports from his scouts. They had sent fast ships ahead to survey Earth's defenses. The reports were disappointing. 300 ships, he scoffed. Primitive weapons. No orbital defense platforms that we can detect. This will be easier than I thought. His second-in-command, a younger Vorath named Kelshir, looked worried. Commander, there are some strange objects in Earth's orbit. Our scouts couldn't identify them. They appear very old. Old space junk, Thelkaris dismissed. The humans are young. They probably haven't cleaned up their orbital space properly. Ignore it. Yuna watched the Vorath fleet's progress from Apex Prime. She had been sending messages to Thelkaris constantly, begging him to turn back. Every message was ignored or returned with mockery. One message from Thelkaris played on repeat in her mind. Little human, your planet will learn respect. Perhaps we will make you all serve as examples to other young species. Maybe a few centuries of servitude will teach you humility. She tried contacting other council members, pleading for them to recall the fleet. None would help. Some felt humanity deserved this. Others simply didn't care. Yuna had never felt so powerless. The Vorath fleet crossed into the outer edges of Earth's solar system. They passed Neptune, then Uranus. Their sensors swept constantly, looking for any sign of human ships or defensive positions. They found nothing. Thelkaris smiled. The humans aren't even going to fight. They know they cannot win. Perhaps this will be a peaceful surrender. As the fleet entered the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, something changed. The old satellites around Earth suddenly blazed with light. Energy signatures appeared across the solar system. The Vorath sensors went crazy with alerts and warnings. Commander! Kelsier shouted. We're detecting massive power buildups. Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, even the asteroid belt. Everything is lighting up. On Earth, Sora sat in the Orbital Defense Command Center, watching her screens in shock. Sir, the satellites are doing something. They're sending energy to everything. Hana stood beside her, staring at the displays. What is that? I don't know, but whatever it is, it's big. High above Mars, the planet's 2 small moons began to rotate. Dust that had covered them for millions of years fell away, revealing smooth metal surfaces beneath. Panels slid open, exposing weapon systems that had been hidden since before humanity existed. Jupiter's great red spot, that massive storm that had raged for centuries, began to pulse with energy. The storm wasn't natural at all. It was a focusing lens, a massive energy collector that had been sleeping. Saturn's beautiful rings, admired by every human who had ever looked through a telescope, shifted and aligned. They formed a perfect circle, each ice particle moving with mechanical precision. The rings were not ice and rock. They were components of a weapon system beyond human understanding. The Vorath fleet stopped moving. Every sensor on every ship was screaming warnings. Thelkaris stared at his displays, his forehands gripping the armrests of his command chair. What is this? He whispered. Then the ancient satellite sent a message. It broadcast on every frequency and every known language in the galaxy. In the Vorath ships, the message appeared in their language. On Earth, it appeared in every human language that had ever existed, including languages that died thousands of years ago. The message was simple. Defense Protocol Omega initiated. Hostile fleet detected, awaiting human command authorization. Yuna stood in the center of the Great Hall on Apex Prime Station. Around her, thousands of alien delegates filled the seats that rose in circles toward the ceiling. Their eyes, some human-like and others completely foreign, watched her with barely hidden contempt. She held a small data device in her hand, and her heart beat fast in her chest. Honorable delegates, she began, her voice amplified across the massive chamber. I come before you with evidence that cannot be ignored. Throughout this galaxy, my people have found markers, ancient stones carved with warnings. These markers are written in a language that died before any of our civilizations rose to power. A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Yuna activated the device. Holographic images appeared above her head, showing tall stone pillars covered in strange symbols. The symbols glowed with a faint blue light. These markers all say the same thing, Yuna continued. They warn travelers to stay away from a specific planet. They call it the Silent Planet. The coordinates they give match perfectly with Earth's location in space. Loud laughter erupted from the Vorath section. Their leader, Thelkaris, stood up. His massive frame towered over most other species in the room. His skin was dark red and his forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke. The humans waste our time again, Thelkaris announced. His voice boomed across the hall. They bring us children's stories and call them evidence. They want us to believe their young world is special, that their primitive planet deserves respect. More laughter followed his words. Yuna felt her face grow hot, but she kept her composure. These are not stories. The age of these markers has been verified by multiple independent research teams. They are over 50,000 years old. That means they were created before humans even existed. A delegate from the Nexian collective rose to speak. Her body was thin and metallic, more machine than organic. If these warnings predate humanity, she said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes, then perhaps they warn of something that once lived on Earth. Something that is now extinct. Why should we care about ancient history? Back on Earth, deep in an underground research facility, Tay wiped dust from another piece of ancient stone. He had spent the last 3 years studying these markers. His team had found 12 of them scattered across different planets. Each one told the same story in the same dead language. His assistant rushed into the lab, her face pale. Dr. Tay, we finished the carbon dating on the marker from Kepler 442b. Tay looked up from his work. And 52,000 years old, just like the others. She handed him a data pad. But there's something else. We found trace elements in the stone that don't exist naturally on any planet we've surveyed. Whoever made these markers had technology we still don't understand. Tay felt a chill run down his spine. He immediately called Hana, Earth's chief of defense. She answered on the first ring, her face appearing on his screen. She looked tired. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "What is it, Tay?" she asked. "The markers are real, Hannah. They're older than we thought possible, and whoever made them had technology far beyond ours." He paused. "I think the warnings are real, too." Hannah rubbed her temples. "I believe you. But the council doesn't. Una just finished her presentation." They laughed at her. "They think we're trying to make ourselves seem important. What happens now?" "I don't know. But I have a bad feeling about this." On Apex Prime, the council had moved to a vote. The topic was simple. Should the Galactic Council investigate Earth for potential violations of space law? The Vorath had accused humanity of creating the markers themselves, of spreading false warnings to keep other species away from their world. Thelkaris addressed the assembly again. "The humans hide something. Why else would they create such elaborate lies? I propose we send a fleet to Earth. We will inspect their world. We will show them that young species cannot deceive the Galactic Council." Una protested loudly. "This is absurd. We created nothing. We're trying to warn you all that these markers exist for a reason." But her voice was drowned out by the noise of the crowd. Species that had envied humanity's rapid advancement now saw a chance to put Earth in its place. Species that feared humanity's potential wanted to limit their growth. The vote began. The results appeared on screens throughout the hall. 47 votes in favor of sending a fleet to Earth. Only 3 votes against. Earth and 2 minor species that had always been friendly to humans stood alone. Thelkaris smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "It is decided. I will personally lead the fleet to the silent planet. We will see what secrets humanity hides." Una felt her stomach drop. She immediately opened a communication channel to Earth. When Hannah appeared on her private screen, Una's voice shook. "They voted to send a fleet. 2,000 Vorath warships are coming to Earth." Hannah's face went hard. "When?" "They leave in 3 days. They'll reach us in 2 weeks. That's not much time." Hannah's fingers moved quickly over controls off-screen. "I'm activating our defense protocols. All of them. Even the old ones. The ones we don't understand. Especially those." Hannah's eyes met Una's through the screen. "If the markers are real, if the warnings are real, then maybe our ancestors left us something to protect ourselves with. We need every advantage we can get." After Hannah ended the call, she sat alone in her office. On her desk lay an ancient document, passed down from one defense chief to another for over 200 years. Nobody knew who wrote it originally. The paper was yellow with age and the writing was faded, but the words were clear. "If Earth ever faces invasion from the stars, activate the deep grid. Trust the old satellites. They are not ours, but they will answer to us." Hannah had always thought it was nonsense, some kind of tradition or myth. But now, with a Vorath fleet approaching, she had no choice. She pulled up the defense network controls on her computer. Hidden deep in the system, buried under layers of security, she found a program labeled Deep Grid, Origin Unknown. Her finger hovered over the activation button. Once she pressed it, there would be no turning back. Whatever happened next would change everything. She pressed the button. Across Earth's orbit, objects that had floated silently in space for thousands of years began to wake up. Old satellites covered in the same symbols as the ancient markers started to move. They had been sleeping for 50,000 years. Now they were awake, and Earth had no idea what it had just unleashed.